What it do, Harry? I hope everybody's good. We are going to celebrate Breonna Taylor. It's been a rough week here in Columbus, and I'm sure it's been rough all over the country. So we just want to share some love and light and some thoughts. And I'll do my best to manage the chat and the production. So, hey, Uncle Donald. So welcome to Drumversations. Like I said, it's been a rough week. I've been in like 10-hour days worth of meetings since last Thursday, or Thursday before yesterday, because the world or the country is trying to figure out something that we've been telling them for 400 years. But before we get into all of that, I want to breathe and remember our ancestors. So take a few seconds, just breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. As we breathe in, we're breathing in life and all the positive energy that the universe has for us because we're one with the universe. And as we breathe out, we're releasing all the tension, the anxiety, the anger, the hatred that can destroy us. As we breathe in again, we use the energy that gives life from the breath to create change. Breathe out all the negativity. Breathe in all the power from being who you are, because we all together and individually are enough. So like I said, I'm here. Oh, Layla woke up. Hi, Lolly. So if come over and read the comments. We ask you to write the names of your ancestors in the chat, and we will call them out. I want to dedicate today's session to Breonna Taylor on what is, because we believe our ancestors do not leave us. The corporeal body is gone, but the spirit is still here. Today is her 27th birthday. She believed, based on what I've seen on social media, that 2020 was going to be her year, and her life was taken away from us. So, Breonna Taylor, we call your name and we say Ashe. Please put your ancestors in the chat. I'm going to play the ancestral drum call, and we will call their names. So when I get done, if there are names in the chat, you'll read them to me. All right. So, do we have anything in the chat? Hi, everybody. So we honor all of the ancestors today. We honor everyone. We honor George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, all of the familial ancestors that are named in the chat, and we say Ashe. But today, on Breonna Taylor's birthday, I wanted to focus the narrative around her and why it seems like we can't walk and chew gum. We can't honor one fallen family member when another one has fallen, especially, it seems, when that person is a black woman. And I want to caution that I don't believe that to be true. I know personally, and in my home and in my community, the conversation is inclusive of all of these folks, regardless of gender, whether they be trans, identify as male, female, what have you. But in the public space, it seems difficult. We don't see the same level of response and engagement with Breonna Taylor's murder, or with the several African-American trans folks that we've seen in the headlines, or in some headlines in the past week. And I want to say that in thinking about this, there are a couple of things that come to mind. They are, and remember, I'm here, Ruth is working, so I don't see everything in the chat, but I'm going to try to catch it. Oh, I got it working, okay. Hi, Dad. Layla's helping me today. She just woke up. So we want to call Verna Lomax, Ashe. Eunice Lindsay, Ashe. Elizabeth Brown, Ashe. Aunt Gertie, Ashe. Uncle James Lomax, Ashe. Thank you. Ashe. With the way things happen, you know, I think it comes down to two factors that really stand out to me in this particular situation, right? So we have global outrage and protests in the name of George Floyd, and those protests seem, they feel at least in this moments. Hi, Mom. Pop-Up Charles Fisher Goins, Ashe. It seems that we cannot march in the names of more than one people. We can't march in the names of both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And so where is the protest? Where is the outrage? If we need separate protests, why aren't we seeing the same level of protest, maybe a different protest for Breonna Taylor that we're seeing for George Floyd if they have to be separate? And the thing is, I don't know that they have to be separate, but in a place like America, or as my father says, amerikkka, right? A place where white lives aren't all valued equally. I think there's a constant conflict between substance and spectacle. With the killing of George Floyd, we have video over 10 minutes long that shows 8 minutes and 24 seconds of those 10 minutes or so of an officer with his knee in George's neck. We have 8 minutes and 24 seconds of video that show a man dying, telling the police that he cannot breathe, and hearing the police taunt him. We here have 8 minutes and 24 seconds where toward the end of that video, he's calling for his mother as he sees her welcoming him home, right? Because she passed away years ago. With Breonna Taylor, though, we don't have the same spectacle. The police barged into her home while she's sleeping and shoots her 8 times. We don't have a video of that. We don't have a video of the police barging into their home unannounced and her partner shooting at the police to protect him and his family. And then they arrest him, subsequently letting him go. But they still arrested him, adding more trauma knowing that he, as a man, in the way we understand manhood from the patriarchal sense in the West, he's not able to protect his family. We don't have footage of that. And so I think the fact that there is no spectacle associated with the lives of these particular black people, one being Breonna Taylor, whose life we have lost. We don't get the same uproar, the same outcry, the same outrage, because there's no spectacle attached to it. But I would argue that if America was founded on substance other than the enslavement and killing and rape of Africans, the First Nation folks who have been all but extinguished from the face of the earth, and the disenfranchisement of poor white folk and white women, if we had been steeped as a country in any other principle that was humane, then we would have the stuff, the substance, to honor Breonna's life the same way that we honor George Floyd's life, because both were taken away as a result of the exact same energy, the exact same evil. Breonna wasn't killed because she was a black woman. George wasn't killed just because he was a black man. They were killed because they were black, and this society, this system, does not honor their lives. How do I know that? Because we have white folk doing worse things in front of law enforcement and living to tell the story, right? Remember that white boy that killed those 9 folks at the church, right? What did they do to him? The police officers arrested him, put a bulletproof vest on him, took him to Burger King, right? 9 lives in a church during a prayer meeting were taken. And this young white boy who was armed and dangerous gets treated to a meal and a bulletproof vest. Why wasn't he killed? Why aren't the white men and women who are protesting, the opening up of the country with guns at the State House in front of police killed? When unarmed black bodies who are sleeping, in the case of Breonna Taylor, are killed openly and without remorse. It's because the country is sick. There's a psychosis. I call it the American pathology. If you are in any way American, born here, moved here, eventually you catch it too. It's worse than the coronavirus, but it only attacks certain people, right? I have no path forward. I don't know how we are going to get past it or through it. I mean, I do know how, but I don't think this is the time for that conversation. I think this is the time to feel and to be angry. And so I'm going to play something in tribute to Breonna for her birthday. 8 rim shots at the end of that to honor, or to, not to honor, but to remind us that a woman who was asleep in her bed was shot 8 times by police on accident. It was the wrong house. She was accidentally shot while sleeping. It's reminiscent, again, of the 8-year-old Ayanna Jones in Detroit, who was set on fire and shot while sleeping by Detroit police. It's also reminiscent of Fred Hampton. When people ask why are people out in the streets protesting, it's us that's protesting, it's them that are rioting. When we're out in the streets protesting and trying to remind the world about our own humanity and affirm our own humanity for ourselves, it is because this is not new. This is not the first time it's happened. This isn't an armed, you're not armed in the bed sleep. She's asleep. And that didn't matter. The police still did not see a human being. We know that Fred Hampton was assassinated in his bed, sleeping next to his pregnant partner. The police in Chicago at that time said that they were fired upon by the Black Panther Party and provided pictorial evidence of what they said were gunshots, which later turned out to be nail holes. We ask the question, what does it take for you to see us and see our humanity? It's not our job. It's your job, white America. It's your job, white people, to see your own humanity. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not our issue, it's your issue. We just bear the brunt of your psychosis, right? And many of us have fallen prey to it as well. But that doesn't mean that the burden of healing is on us. We have our own wounds at your hand to heal from, absolutely. But this is not a time for us to talk about healing America. You cannot heal while in battle. You have to fight. You cannot heal when your wounds keep being ripped open through no fault of your own, right? That's why I have a problem with communities, states, counties, cities declaring racism as a public health crisis. Not that it's not a public health crisis, it absolutely is a public health crisis, but it's not a health crisis for Black America. It's a health crisis for white America, right? Because it's not Black America that created America. It's not Black America, it's not even Africa that created the transatlantic slave trade that gave rise to the superpower that is America today. It's not Black America that benefits from racist policies and institutions. It's not Black America that continues to create policy. It is, in part, members of Black America as a demographic who uphold and enforce and inform racist policies. Absolutely the case, right? There's a continuum of Black identity, as there always has been, in America at least, where there are those of us who choose to, quote unquote, survive. And so they identify with the oppressor. So the pain that they feel is not as great as what others of us may feel. There are those who are in the middle who might choose a side when it suits them best, right? Today I'm Black because it's safe to be Black. It's safe to be Black because people, including white folk, are out in the streets protesting police brutality, right? So it's safe to be Black today. Tomorrow, maybe not. Tomorrow I might identify with the oppressor because I have to keep my home. I have to keep my Mercedes-Benz or my Range Rover, right? Then there are those of us who know the dangers, we know the history, and yet we still choose to stand for our people at all costs. I had conversations with young people earlier this week who are protesting all over the country. And they asked me, they said, Dr. Lomax, are you in the streets protesting? And I said, no, I'm not in the streets protesting. I might have been in the streets 20 years ago. But I feel like my place is to be the voice that folks hear when they are afraid of what you're doing in the streets. They need to have somebody that can represent you in our collective values and goals, or else they will continue to do these things after the protest, which is a tactic and not a strategy, end. When they feel like you've gotten the emotion out and we can just go back to normal, they will do that. They need somebody that they can talk to that will continue to drive the messages in the halls of power that you're driving in the streets. And I just believe that's my role. I believe that's my role as a Jolly, to create art that pushes those conversations, that forces those difficult, introspective processes. Watch the cord, Ruth. It's stuck in your hair. Ruth is here, yay! I just feel like we all have a part to play, and some of us have to be the voice in the halls of power. Some of us have to be the voice in the, it's too loud, in the, your headphone. Some of us have to be the voice on the street, and we have to have that inside-outside game, like Shaq and Kobe, you know what I mean? Where the folks who are on the outside are pushing the ball inside, and there's a dominant power inside to drive change. And so that's one strategy. I think there are other strategies, right? We have to also figure out, beyond a shadow of a doubt, how to do what we can do for ourselves, simply because we can do it for ourselves, without asking anyone or anything by way of institution, organization, permission, right? Would George Floyd be dead? Would Breonna Taylor be dead? Sandra Bland, all of them, any of them, if we had the means and mechanism by which to protect ourselves? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We need to do those things and find out, right? There are all kinds of reasons why our economies don't work for ourselves, right? But there are also all kinds of plans that suggest that there's a path forward to make the economies work for ourselves. It's not just about buying black. We absolutely should buy black. Buy black, support black businesses. Even if you're not black, support black businesses. But we also need to develop black-owned supply lines. We need to bank black. We need to ensure that those black banks don't succumb to the racist federal policies that hurt black banks up and through the middle 20th century, right? We need to address policy and procedures, the system of racism that is in place, as much as we need to address racist people, right? This is all about police brutality when you talk about Breonna Taylor and how the police, without identifying themselves, break into their home and murder her while she's sleeping. That's police brutality. Yes, absolutely. We need to change the way policing is done. But that's a symptom of the problem. America has pneumonia, and police brutality is a code, right? Breonna Taylor may still be alive if we had addressed the root of the problem, which is the culture of racism, right? Race is a construct. Race is a construct. Ibram Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning, does a great job of outlining and detailing the construct of race and how it evolved. But racism is a power dynamic. And that's why just addressing police brutality won't solve the issue of police brutality, right? So again, in thinking of and honoring Breonna Taylor on her birthday, I personally do not feel like this is a time to heal, because this is a time to go to work. It's a time to use that anger and that frustration and that outrage and that pain to something positive. It's the time to drive, not the time to demand, right? The problem I've had, and I could be wrong about this, and the elders who are on the line, please let me know what you think, but the failings of previous movements, in my opinion, come from the fact that we have asked Some would say we've made demands, but I say it's a question we ask because we don't have the power to make the demands come to bear. We don't have the power to make America do anything. So you cannot make a demand of someone or something by which you don't have the power to make that demand happen. You can only ask as politely or as forcibly as you feel is necessary, but it's still a request. It is only when we leverage the power that we have as human beings, the full extent of our resources, intellectual capital, financial capital, right? Capital, churches, homes, all of those things, areas, neighborhoods, schools. Only when we leverage all that we have and all that we are, do we have the global capital, not just in this confines of America, the global capital to demand justice and to demand equal treatment, not just under the law of the land, but under the law of the universe. That's how I think we can honor Breonna Taylor's memory. That's how I think we move forward when it's time and when we can. What I mean by that is we have to take the time to plan, and we have to take the time to act with a conscious direction, not just because we're angry, not just because we are outraged. Those are definitely catalyzing forms of energy, but we need to direct those energies into strategies and things and actions that we can actually do to change the situation. I'm going to play something else. Oops. Now that people aren't talking. I mean, are people talking? So, let's see. I lost my page. Here we go. So, honoring Breonna Taylor, we say her name. We say her name, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, Breonna Taylor, because it just feels like so many names have to be said that many get drowned out in the cacophony, the pain, the anguish, the outrage of just so many things happening. Um, in thinking again of Breonna Taylor and not feeling personally, I mean, some people might be ready to move forward. I just am not ready to heal because I don't feel like that is authentic in this time. I just don't feel like it makes sense for me, whatever platform I have, whatever books I've read, whatever people I'm talking to, whether they be powerful or not. I just don't feel like that's good advice, right? To heal in the midst of tragedy and ongoing tragedy. I think, the folks who are saying heal without really understanding that there's no healing without justice are working against the interest of humanity. They're working against the interest of Black America. They're working against the interest of Africans in America, regardless of how you identify politically or otherwise. When tragedy like this strikes on top of tragedy, and then there was an article that said there's an Empire State Building sized meteor heading for the Earth. I mean, can 2020 get worse? You know what I mean? It's insane. And I have to laugh to not cry and not get overwhelmed. But it begs the question, how do you and I transform what we feel, that pain, that anger, that anguish, that outrage, as a result of this spectacle, the spectacle of death, the spectacle of losing lives and Black bodies being treated as chattel, still as objects, where we hear public officials caring more about loss of property than the loss of life? How do we transform that energy and the spectacle of those events to substantive action? How do we do that? Well, there are many ways, and we've talked about them. I'm not going to rehash them today because I just want us to kind of sit with the pain and sit with the memory of Breonna Taylor, a Black woman who was asleep in her bed and was shot 8 times. We have to sit with these things, right? If we don't sit, if we don't deal with them, if we don't process together and individually, then it's really easy to forget and not do the work, right? It really makes me think of how the end of the civil rights movement in the 20th century opened Black America up to yet more tragedy, right? What do I mean by that? I mean, in the 60s, as a result of the efforts of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker and all of these folks, Barrett Rustin, all of these folks, right? We get the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Acts, right? In the 60s. But in 1964, Malcolm X is murdered. In 1968, Martin King is murdered. And by 75, 77, the rest of the civil rights movement has been effectively squelched, right? Effectively because all of the leadership has been, what's that? All of the leadership has been murdered. All of the leadership that was not murdered was imprisoned. And the rest of the leadership that was not murdered or imprisoned were then exiled. They went into hiding, right? Cuba, Africa, elsewhere in the world. And that disruption, that extraction, that execution of Black power, execution meaning death, kill, not implementation, of Black power left, along with the fact that many, quote unquote, middle class Black people felt the need and desire to move into predominantly white neighborhoods, further diluting our power, right? That disruption, that brain drain, that killing off, and elimination of black power in all ways and forms opened the door for mass incarceration, which further depleted the leadership and the strength of black men in our neighborhoods for our children and our women, our broader community. Mass incarceration was followed by the crack epidemic of the 80s, and we lost a generation and a half, I would argue. The crack epidemic was well, I thought you were going to say something. Ruth is back, so I'm thinking she was going to tell me something somebody said. So we're just kind of out of sync because we're doing a lot at the same time. Mass incarceration, crack epidemic, and then we saw yet another change in the music from hip hop in terms of love for the culture, the CNN of the culture, the display of every facet of black culture, to gangsterism, which further influenced our young people away from who they truly are. And because of all of those events and everything that followed that since, right, Black America is not positioned to engage effectively when incidences like Breonna Taylor's murder happens, right? We're not in a position to engage effectively even when we're inspired by George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery, right? Say any of the names and point to any of the protests, Mike Brown in Ferguson, and tell me what change has happened. What substantive change has happened? And I'm not saying or in any way insinuating that the protest is spectacle for the sake of spectacle. It is not. Protests and even riots are powerful tools for change. Protest and riots are powerful tools for change if simultaneously there is action to actually bring about the change. Protest and riot, they're tools that weren't designed to create change in and of themselves. That's not their job. That's not the function of those actions. Those actions function to put pressure politically on any and everyone who has the power and decides that they are going to work toward change long term. Change happens over a course of time, years. And we're talking about substantive shifts in culture. A culture that is more than 400 years in the making, right? You got to remember, the genocide of First Nation people didn't start with Manifest Destiny. It started with the Mayflower. It started at Plymouth Rock, right? And then you have, and then you have, and then you have. It's Groundhog Day. These things happen again and 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 again. We protest and again, again, again and again. We protest and again, again, again. We protest, we riot, we protest, we riot. And people are always like, well, I know you're upset about Breonna Taylor, but you need to peacefully engage. And my response has been, well, Martin Luther King peacefully engaged and you killed him. Right? How many people have been killed for peacefully engaging? My God, Breonna Taylor was asleep in her bed. It doesn't get more peaceful than that. She was murdered still. So my question, again, is how do we take this energy that we feel? Any human being following these stories should be feeling pissed off. How do we collect that energy and drive the change we all need? It's not about wants. We need this change because we are human beings and we all deserve to be our optimal human selves. And I'm of the mind at this point that we cannot optimize our human capacity unless we engage. It is through walking this line, this path to freedom, through the fire, that we are made into pure gold and we are optimized through this struggle. So my question to you is, how will you engage? We have a few minutes left. I'm going to play us out. The mic's off. Check that. So, so I know it's been a rough period of time for everyone, myself included. I know that there are many people who want to move forward. They want to move past. But I recommend, even as we start these Drumversations, that we just sit with our pain, that we sit with our anger, and we sit with our outrage. And as we're sitting with that and we're processing that, and we're understanding just beyond the spectacle of the pain, we understand the substance of the pain and the substance of the work that it's going to take to ensure that these things no longer happen, right? Drumversations has taken a turn that's exciting, I think. And there has been a great response to a lot of the things that has gone on as a result of Drumversations. So we encourage you to find the new Drumversations podcast that Ruth and I we started last week. We launched it last week. It's on SoundCloud. All you have to do is SoundCloud, CFG Multimedia, /CFG Multimedia, and you should find it there. And there's the potential of a monthly column in the African American Journal here in Columbus and and Dayton that we are in conversations about. I share it only to say that to me it's apparent that this work is vital, and I appreciate your support. We also, as a result of your support for the curriculum, which is a great way, incidentally, to help folks understand the context of today. Over 100 citations and a lot of great questions for introspection here, and the sales of the suite. I know Jay Simmons is on the line, and a lot of my family, they've all purchased one or both of those products. Earlier this week, we were able to make a $550 donation to the Greater Columbus Artist Relief Fund. And in particular, I want to shout out Auntie Sunzaray, who made a significant contribution to those efforts, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate all of my family who have supported this work and I know are in it. Honestly, a lot of what I'm saying and the path of my thinking has come from long conversations with my father and his recommendations of books and, you know, the work even that I saw my mom do in predominantly white school districts, which helped me understand, you know, whiteness outside of my own experience as a black man or a black person in America, and even understanding my wife's experience as the only or one of few African American students in her schools, as she grew up in private parochial schools. I think there were only 2 in her graduating class in high school. And then even seeing my daughter's journey, they have a much more diverse community, but they're still in predominantly white spaces as we do the work that we do. So I can't do any of this without you. I can't do any of this on my own. So I really appreciate you all being here. And I really do think that together we can change the world, but we all have to find our place. We all have to hold our space, process this pain individually and together, and use that energy to move forward. So Ashe, Amen, all of those things. We honor and show our love for Breonna Taylor today on her 27th birthday. Thank you.